this is English weather. He said, well, yesterday was English summer weather as well. Now then, Andy Smith, late change. Andy Smith's March 783 has been sent to the back of the grid for a small technical infringement, which means that the first car in the queue should be Roland Mitchell in the Rolt RT3, with Christian Valio starting alongside him and Eric Martin's Martini. Very popular in Europe, didn't see many of them in the UK in period. He will be third fastest on the grid. Lola Toyota, well, that gives you a clue not to the chassis but to the engine. Toyota Nova Motor, Alfa Romeo engines were very popular, particularly in Europe. Toyota Nova Motor was the dominant force early in Classic F3 before the VW, the Speed Tune VWs really came in. But most of these cars will be running the Nova Motor. They're all 2-litre 4-cylinder engines with an air restrictor to govern the top end power. Cars heading around on their formation lap to just get a little look at the Silverstone circuit this morning, weave some heat into the tyres, and the March 783 there, the white car with the red and blue BMW Motorsport stripes of Andy Smith, appears to be on pole position. So either we were fed some duff information or he has not been fed the correct information. We were told that just now that he'd be sent to the back of the grid for a quote, small technical infringement, but it seems that maybe that has been appealed. So it will be Andy Smith's March and the Rolt of Richard Mitchell. And those pictures you see of Ayrton Senna and Martin Brundle in the classic British Formula 3 Championship squabbles that they had, then almost all the field was in Ron Taranak's Rolt RT3 until the advent of Dallara with the 382, one of which you will see at the back of the grid, Angelo Grasso's car number 93. The Rolt was the dominant force. Yes, Martini and a few others, March, had cars out in the early days of Formula 3, but once the RT3 came over, proper ground effect car, it absolutely ruled the roost. And the Toyota Nova Motor engine, and then more latterly Speed Tune VWs, the cars to have. 33, the white car just going through shot with a very familiar livery for British fans. That's Fraser Gray's RT3 with Racing for Britain on the side. And for those of you of a certain vintage, you'll remember Steve Sydenham raising funds for British drivers like Martin Brundle and others to go racing. It was public donations that funded Racing for Britain. So we are ready now to unleash our Formula 3 cars. Formula 3 Classic Interseries underway at the Silverstone Festival. On pole on the left-hand side of the picture, Andy Smith, the driver's right. Pole position heading down into Abbey for the first time. On the outside of the front row, the Rolt of Richard Mitchell jumped at the start. Through comes the Chevron, no, I beg your pardon, the March of Christian Valio, the red and white car. And past him as well goes the Martini of Eric Martin. That's the Marlboro liveried car number 2. Oh, sorry, can't say that. Other brands were available in period. But Eric Martin, the Frenchman, in his French-built Martini chassis, Mark 39, which tells you how long Martini had been making cars, as well as drinks, different company, obviously. He's up to second place, tucking out from the group, trying to make their way through. A little bit of jockeying for position. You saw Pascal Jabou in the dark red car number 35, and he's made a good start from 11th on the grid. Cameras picking up Frederic Lajou in his March 793, the Warsteiner liveried gold car, which is essentially the 783 but with full ground effect. But it is Andy Smith who leads in the red, white and blue Motul liveried March. And
pulling away well from Eric Martin, who came up through in the MK39, not Mark, it's not MK short for that, Martini Knight it stands for. But he's in second place. Third place is Christian Valio, and then in fourth place is the very fast starting number 35 of Pascal Gerbou, who started in 10th on the grid, and he's being challenged by Richard Mitchell, who was right on the front row, so he's not had a great first lap. And Mitchell himself now being challenged on the outside by the blue and white car. That's the Chevron B43 of Simon Jackson, who you heard Ed talking to before the race.
And past him goes Dominic Jackson as well, car number 63, the Toyota engined Lola. Again, Lola at this stage building customer cars for just about every category that existed in single-seaters and sports car racing. Indy cars, Formula Atlantic, Formula 2, Formula 3, Formula Ford. And out front, the Mark 783 of Andy Smith really running away. Eric Martin in second place, and 35, Pierre Gerbout in third. That's a really strong start from him, from the back of the top 10 up into a podium spot on lap 1. And here's this big dice behind the Marlboro car, getting dive bombed left, right and centre. Christian Valliot, the Swiss driver, in his March 783, and through goes the blue, dark blue car number 63, the Lola of Dominic Jackson.
And Dominic Jackson, the son of Simon Jackson, who is also challenging the car between them now as they come down the Wellington Straight. Dominic ahead into Brooklands, and Andy Smith, though, really doing what he does best, which is to just open up a gap and hold the lead of the race. An incredibly fast driver. We will be seeing him again in the Formula 2 Interseries race as well, as the mid-pack come through. It's a good battle we're seeing through Copse Corner, and starting the rise now. The leader of the second group in second place is the number 2 car of Eric Martin, the Marlboro liveried Martini MK39. In third place, Pascal Gerbout, who had a really good start, as we've said, in the all-red Rolt RT1.
Nice little pass there, you just saw slipping up the order. Car number 14, that's Stephen Barlow's Rolt RT3, picks up 13th place from Laurent Valerie Masson, another Rolt RT3. So those cars, early 80s, some of these cars, you can see the race leader, 1978 March, and the Martini, again, that is early 80s as well, really much on a par. The red car in third place is the first of Ron Taranak's own designs. That's a Rolt RT1, very different looking thing to the RT3, with that big shovel nose, which was so popular for generating downforce at the end of the 70s. And the car right behind him, very similar. But when you look at the RT3, it's got a much more modern look, a narrow pointed nose with individual front winglets. You can see that car, it looks to be from a whole different era. So you can see the Rolts, the red car, the Chevron right behind, rather, the blue car. Again, that very similar wide nose, but the Martini with a narrow nose. And of course, that means with that narrow nose and those little winglets, that means that was a ground effect car, because you want the air to go through, whereas with the wide noses, it was to generate downforce over the whole of the front bodywork. So you can see again the difference between the pre-downforce cars and then the downforce cars with the narrow noses and the little winglets at the front.
And the battle coming down for third place is Dominic Jackson in the Lola, challenging the third placed car in the all-red car number 35 of Pascal Gerbout. That's the Rout. So it's Eric Broadley versus Ron Taranak, two of the great race car designers of this era as they come through. And in fact, Dominic Jackson gets ahead at Luffield. So Dominic Jackson moves up into third place. Pascal Gerbout, after that stunning start, drops to fourth place. But very much still in contention.
Yeah,
and
just ran a little wide there in Luffield and left the door open on the inside, and Dominic Jackson wasn't going to say no to that, was he? It was an open invitation, but now Gerbout is in the slipstream as they come through Maggots, over the rise and dropping down into the Beckett's S's. Of course, now he's in the turbulent air behind the car in front, so his aerodynamics, as much as they are, will work a little less well. And he's just dropping a little behind. He had been holding off Dominic Jackson. Simon Jackson behind the white car with the blue car with the white superstructure, ahead of the Warsteiner March behind him. And then this next little battle, 28, is Xavier Michel in the Chevron blue car, and down the inside, and the Marlboro March having a little stab, didn't quite get his nose inside there. Christian Valliot, the Swiss driver, but having a look. Warsteiner livery, very familiar for all sorts of fans of 70s and early 80s, mid-80s German racing. Warsteiner Beer Company sponsoring lots and lots of different cars and teams over the years. Very distinctive, and in fact, Warstein at 0.0%. That's a slightly more modern. I don't think they went in for non-alcohol beer in the 70s. Perish the thought.
And we need to keep an eye now on second and third places, because now Dominic Jackson has managed to get past the car of Pascal Gerbout. He is now on the track immediately behind Eric Martin. It was 1.2 seconds at the line, and their lap time's very similar, but I wonder now whether Dominic will be able to go a little bit quicker and start to close that gap on the red and white car.
Yeah, he should have some clear air in third place now that he didn't have before. Great view of the different rear ends of these cars, and well, that sort of reflects whether they were pre-ground effect or ground effect. Again here, look at the rake on these pre-ground effect cars. The rear end is up, the nose is down, and that's to use the bodywork to generate downforce as well and to get a little bit of rear roll into the car. But when you've got the ground effect cars, then a very much more level platform is required, and you can see the 33, the Racing for Britain Rolt, and car number 3 behind it, and car number 22. So 3 Rolt RT3s, 4 Rolt RT3s in a row. In fact, a very much lower ground clearance to the cars. Race leader halfway down the hangar straight, looking for the battle for second. Eric Martin in second place, and in third place is Dominic Jackson. Last time round, 2:10.14 for Martin in second, 2:10.12 for Jackson in third, but that was when he was struggling to get by Pascal Gerbout. So having got clear, let's see what he produces. The race leader last time round, our pole sitter Andy Smith, did a 2:07.2. He's now down to a 2:06.7 at the end of this lap. So getting quicker and quicker and building a much bigger lead. But as the second place battle comes across the line, it's gone from 1.7 to 0.7 seconds, and both of them lapping very quickly. But in second place, the Marlborough liveried car number 2, Eric Martin, not as quick as Dominic Jackson behind him. The blue Lola is definitely reeling in the Martini in front.
Well, the first chance now for Dominic Jackson, but I don't think he's close enough, will be at the end of the Wellington Straight into Brooklands. He's probably too far behind, so he'll stay in the slipstream as they come down the long Wellington Straight, just to maximise the aerodynamic effect that he can get. And they both squirrel under braking. They're both leaving their braking till the last possible moment into Brooklands. Now they go through the long double apex right-hander at Luffield, which takes them out onto Woodcote Corner and then the Heritage Pit Straight, and then out down towards Copse.
There's been a spin for Pascal Gerbout, who was in 4th place and has now plummeted down to 16th. And so he has disappeared. No, he hasn't. You can see him there. The eyeball does not lie. He's still in 4th place. The timing screen is playing games with us. So Pascal Gerbout, the red car behind this battle for second, remains where he was. And Simon Jackson in 5th place, ahead of car number 21, Frederic Lejoux in the Warsteiner March. And then the slew of Rolts. So in fact, the older cars here going better than the more modern machinery, and that's not necessarily the way you might expect it to be. You would think something that's a bit more highly developed from the early to mid 1980s would be going better than a car nearly 10 years older. And then the Marches and the older cars have got maybe another 10 more years development in them than the Rolts.
Eric Martin and indeed Dominic Jackson having to make their way. In fact, I was about to say Eric Martin been slightly held up there, but the worst out of that went to Dominic Jackson. He got held up behind the slower car. Not the fault of that slower car, that was Neil Jenkins. There's nowhere he could go in Club Corner. So Dominic Jackson loses a little time, and I think that's gone from 0.6 at the line, and it'll be more like 1.6 now.
This is Christian Vallio, just ahead of 33, the Racing for Britain Rolt. And that is our class leader for the ground effect cars, which of course are not running at ground effect any longer. They don't have the skirts that would have been hugging the ground, and a change of position, diving through on the inside, car number 3. So that is a change for the class lead. Fraser Gray in the white car was in front. There's just been dive bombed by Richard Mitchell, who started on the outside of the front row of the grid. So Richard Mitchell started in second place and has just taken and just loses 10th again. So a great little battle going on there. And there is trouble, unfortunately, car number 18, Bert Tinkler's Chevron B47 in the gravel. And that might mean that with just under 13 minutes remaining, we could be heading towards a safety car. He's stranded in the gravel on the outside of Luffield. The leaders aren't there yet, but the marshals will need the cover of a safety car to recover that car. And of course, he is just inches off the racing line. Not sure that the race director is going to get away without the safety car for that. Meanwhile, back to the battle for second. Eric Martin from Dominic Jackson. Eric Martin, right, hand out of the cockpit. So they're seeing safety car boards surely somewhere.
Or just a yellow flag at the moment.
Yeah,
yes, they were just coming into that yellow flag zone, so he was just acknowledging the marshal and also warning Dominic Jackson, whose eyes would have been on stalks, focused on Eric Martin ahead, but they're into a green flag zone now, so battle can be resumed as they come out of Club Corner onto the Sir Lewis Hamilton straight up towards Abbey and Farm, the flat out right left. And will Dominic snick out there? No, he doesn't. He stays in the slipstream, but I think he'll go for an out-braking manoeuvre into Village through the left-hander. Now it's over to the left of the track and hard on the brakes. Dominic goes wide and will try to cut back as they go into the loop. And he goes wide into the loop, so another cutback opportunity here to come up the inside, but Eric Martin holds the line beautifully and goes through Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight, still in that second place. Next opportunity into Brooklands for Dominic Jackson.
Yes, you sense it's a matter of when, not if. Dominic Jackson sends it to the inside into Brooklands, and Eric Martin, well, he fights it all the way. But with Jackson on the inside, there was really no coming back unless Dominic had somehow outbraked himself and couldn't control the car, in which case Eric Martin would have been on the outside and getting collected anyway. Martin's helmet, shades of Philippe Alliot, I think, in his helmet colours, and not quite the same, but certainly he's got the red, white and blue and that kind of very interesting looking helmet. Down to third place, Dominic Jackson up to second then. Will he be able to start to ease away? It's a good race from Dominic Jackson, only qualified 9th, 2:10.5 compared to 2:06.3 of pole sitter Andy Smith, who's romping away here. And maybe if Dominic had had a little bit of this race pace in qualifying, because his last lap was a 2:10.0, but his fastest lap was a 2:09.1. So his race fastest lap is 1.4 seconds quicker than he managed in qualifying. Well, there you go. So didn't have the best at qualifying. If he'd started at the front, then I think quite possibly Andy Smith might be having a much tougher battle on his hands. Smith is quicker though. He's gone quicker. The only man below a 2:09. He's had a 2:06.7 as his fastest lap, the race leader, and is currently still lapping in the 2:08.0s. So Andy Smith, very much the quickest car on track in qualifying and here today as well. It was sort of dry in qualifying. There were still a few damp patches when these cars went out on Friday morning for qualifying. They made the most of it, certainly not wet weather tyre territory. Dominic Jackson, well, he's had an entertaining race, hasn't he? 9th to 2nd. I don't think he's going to progress any further, but with the better part of 10 minutes remaining, never say never. That's what motor racing tells you, isn't it?
And we can confirm that the car that was stopped at the side of the track at Stowe Corner has been moved by the marshals, despite it being parked almost on the circuit. The marshal's been out there, hard work from them, well done, and that was covered under a yellow flag rather than us needing a safety car, which is great.
Well done indeed, that's fantastic stuff. Pit caller Richard Trott, I'm afraid, has retired from the race in his Chevron. You didn't see it, but it came in underneath our commentary position. And Andy Smith, yeah, fastest lap of the race a couple of laps ago, on lap 4 in fact. We're now on lap 7, so getting the meat out of the tyres before he got into traffic. 2:06.7, and again his qualifying lap was only a 2:06.3, so he was barely 4/10 off his outright best in qualifying. And of course on lap 4 of the race he'll have been carrying enough fuel for 25 minutes rather than the 20-odd minutes of qualifying. He won't have had full tanks then for qualifying. And the March, the 783, the 793, very distinctive. Low wide nose, very low side pods. I mean, the side pods barely come up to the driver's hip, just enough to cover the grubby bits, basically, because the radiator is in the front. And then the driver in this sort of conning tower, upright centre section of the car. Ooh, looping spin. That was the car that was, Pascal Jabou was in 4th place in the Rolt RT1. Gives that away to Simon Jackson, who scuttled past. You just saw the blue car going by. So, whoa, big slide from Andy Smith. Entertaining himself, perhaps, with nobody to play with. Really throwing the car around, isn't he?
I wonder if he's going for another quick time. That's probably not the way to do it. Andy's usually a very, very smooth driver, and it's not the fastest way around to be sliding around.
Well, he has just set another fastest race lap, but very perspicacious of you. 206.475 last time round. His qualifying lap was 206.373. So is he trying to beat his qualifying best? Not sure that he's got a readout in his dash. He might do. In period you wouldn't have had, but some of these drivers might have a little stack data logger or something added to the car as well. Not that it's going to give you much in terms of data during the race other than what your lap time is. Well, he may just be feeling that to entertain himself he's just going to try and rag the car as much as possible.
He knows the Silverstone circuit very well indeed. We've seen him here at the festival in previous years. He's a local man from Warwick. So not too far down the road for him to come to the circuit, and drives any car that he's put in extremely well indeed. So by far the quickest lap for Andy Smith. Dominic Jackson is running in the 2:08s, which is significantly quicker than anyone else other than Andy Smith. So now he's got clear, as we thought. Now Dominic Jackson has got clear of Eric Martin. He's able to lower his lap times, but not enough to close in on this dominant performance from Andy Smith.
Absolutely not. It's almost like he's in a separate category of car, isn't it? And he absolutely isn't. Andy Smith, in 8 laps, has opened up a 20-second gap on the best of the rest. 20 seconds in 8 laps. That's an absolutely dominant performance. This lap, none of his 3 sectors were quicker than any of his previous ones, so maybe give the tyres a breather. And again, our Rolt battle a little further back. Continues. 22, Laurent Valery-Masson, and 33, the Racing for Britain car, Fraser Gray, right behind him, and just ahead of them, another little battle for position, and that is the top Rolt RT3, behind Robert Moores in car number 8 in his Chevron. That's Robert Mitchell in the very dark car. Can't quite figure out whether that's black or very, very dark blue, but Robert Mitchell goes through anyway. The man who was on the outside of the front row of the grid checks the mirrors. Long look in the mirror to see where the Chevron behind him goes.
Through into the tight right at Village, then up to the loop. Richard Mitchell, I think he must have had a problem off screen. We didn't spot that. He dropped back down the order, having qualified second.
Well, he was just going backwards at the start,
yes,
and I wonder whether he hadn't got heat in the tyres, or whether he hadn't got heat in the brakes, or whether the tyre pressures weren't quite set right for today's temperature. I mean, it's probably quite a lot colder track temperature, and certainly air temperature, than it was in qualifying on Friday. Friday was a bit more of a, in fact, yesterday was a warmer morning, although unbelievably wet. Today is really quite chilly, as I'm sure everybody who camped overnight will be very happy to give us chapter and verse on. Should think that was clothes on in the sleeping bag last night. Richard Mitchell easing his way a little further back up the order. Now up into 6th position, 7th position. Is he going to catch Xavier Michel? What's the gap? No, it's 7 seconds. He's really not, is he? I don't think. There's another Alfa Romeo logo on the nose of that run, so not a Toyota Nova motor, but the Alfa 4-cylinder engine. And, it sort of was swings and roundabouts. Alfa were very popular across Formula 3 racing in Europe, and the Toyota Nova motor really sort of held sway. Then Neil Brown Mugen the Speedtune VWs, and there were a few other. Mitsubishi at one stage had a Formula 3 engine which wasn't wildly successful because you've never heard of it, but you know why. Saab as well. Robert Singh Magic Motorsport ran Saab engines for 2 or 3 seasons in Formula Ford, and while they were sort of there-ish, they were never really there or thereabouts. So various different engine tuners held sway over various periods. Certainly British Formula 3 Championship titles won by Toyota engines, won by Mugen engines, won by VW engines. But yes, Alistair is reminding me that very early in British F3, Triumph's 4-cylinder Dolomite engine was also used. Of course, those are the Unipart cars driven by the likes of Tony Dron, Nigel Mansell, and a couple of others. An all-British supported outfit. What chassis were they in, Alistair?
March.
Yes,
yes.
That would seem likely,
yes,
but
so, yeah.
off the top of my head, I couldn't think. Yes, and the late Tony Dron, perhaps more familiar to classic car readers. He was the editor of Classic Car magazine for many, many years, and in latter years very much a saloon car racer. And in fact, the Tony Dron Trophy was raced for yesterday, but he was a single-seater racer in his younger years.
Incredibly, being 6'6",
yes,
he managed to squeeze in.
Mind you, he only weighed about 75 kilos because he was long and thin all his life, very tall, and enormous mop of curly hair. A charming chap who just loved his cars, so much so that his actual only road car was an Austin 7. Everything else he drove would have been a loaner, but his car pretty much all his life was his beloved Austin 7. Meanwhile, back with the action before the director tells me off, Pascal Gerboux in the red Ralt RT1, just clinging on at the moment from Frédéric Lajou in the Warsteiner March. And this is the battle for 5th place. That has changed hands a couple of places. Simon Jackson's got ahead of Lajou, and so too now has Gerboux. Timing screen keeps dropping him out and then picking him back up, so obviously his transponder's not working. The reason that happens is the transponder is not working, and so our timekeepers are reinserting him manually every time he comes across the line. So yeah, the old stopwatch and piece of paper and digital readouts definitely still used when the electricity lets you down. Gerboux definitely seems to be having a bit of a second breath. He's all over the back of Simon Jackson in the blue and white 111. That chevron under pressure. Gerboux on the inside line, coming down the straight, makes the pass, makes the move, and makes the place his own. So he is recovering, isn't he, after a little bit like Richard Mitchell, sort of selected reverse in the first few laps and sagging down the order as the race has progressed. Either he's more at home with the car, or he'd set the tyre pressures a little lower than really was ideal, and they're now a little higher as the car has built heat into the tyres, and he's got more the handling package he wants. Time has run out on the entertaining drive of Andy Smith, the man from pole position, the March 783, who dominated qualifying, has been equally dominant in the race. He hasn't gone over the 20-second margin because he's released the throttle for the last couple of laps, but he wins in absolutely dominating fashion. Claims the Formula 3 win with a new fastest lap, 3/10 quicker than he went in qualifying, 2:06.0 compared to 2:06.3 in qualifying. An astonishing finish, and here we go. This is the battle for 4th place. Sam Jackson in the middle of it, but Pascal Gerboux in car number 35, the red Ralt RT3, as Dominic Jackson takes 2nd and Eric Martin takes 3rd. It will be the Ralt in 4th place. Pascal Gerboux comes across the line ahead of Dominic Jackson, no, Simon Jackson rather, yeah, and Francois Gerboux, Frédéric Lajou rather, in 6th position in the Warsteiner March. And another battle here, down the inside. Last lap pass, Chris Hodgin in his Chevron, the yellow car. sneaking through for, what's this the battle for? 13th place. Gets ahead of Pietro Tenconi's Alba. There's a car I've never seen race in Formula 3. Sort of like a slight copy of a Rolt RT3, but with a few more bulges in unfortunate places. However, they take the flag. And our winners are already underneath us as others are completing their race. Such is the domination of Andy Smith. So he'll be having a cup of tea before Dominic Jackson and Eric Martin arrive in the collecting area. Or he won't, because Bryn will nab him first. Assuming that somebody has replaced the batteries in Bryn Lucas. And there it is, the Motul March. Fabulous looking thing. Beautifully liveried, beautifully driven. And just to reiterate, qualified on pole comfortably, I mean very comfortably, by nearly 3 seconds with a 2:06.373. His fastest race lap, 2:06.001. Ex-Ari Lyondike and Mike Blanchet car in second place. That's Dominic Jackson's car. Now, Mike Blanchet has a lifelong association with Eric Broadley and Lola. He was the sales director of Lola Cars. And Ari Lyondike, of course, the Flying Dutchman, went on to win the Indy 500, be an extremely successful IndyCar driver. And there, Eric Martin with the Martini MK39. And Mike Knight is the knight in Martini, isn't he? Who ran the Winfield Racing School in France as well for many, many years. Well, Bryn Lucas is there. Let's hope they've put him on recharge, and we'll hear, hopefully, from our top 3 drivers.
Hey, I run on that unleaded. Thanks very much there, Martin. What a great victory that was for you, wasn't it? And the lap was extraordinary quick as well. It was quicker than your qualifying time.
Was that the last lap? I don't know if it counts because I crossed the line off the track. So the last lap I thought I'll try and do Max Verstappen and really, really push. And carried a bit too much speed out of the last corner and crossed the line off the track. But it was a good race. I did a bit of sort of conserving tyres and fuel mid-race, and then at the end I thought go for it.
In commentary they described it as dominant, and I think that is how we have to describe it really. It was just looked completely all yours all the way through.
The car was perfect. When you get a car that's set up like that does everything you want it to, it's a beautiful thing to drive, and it makes the driver's job quite easy.
It's quite nice to watch as well. Well done. Thank you very much indeed. Let's move on to second place then. Let's see, Dominic is just here. Come and step round for us, Dominic. What a great performance from you as well. I mean, you had a bit of a battle there for a while, didn't you? But once you got past, that was it.
Yeah, I thought we, myself and the third place guy would have been a bit closer all the way through, but I managed to drop him. So I'm learning really as I go, so each lap was more useful.
You had a couple of attempts to get past, you were nibbling away there, then you found a bit of clear air and you're able to gap him at the end there. But for yourself, it's nice to get this time out on track and maybe have no huge events to have to deal with.
Yeah, after the first 4 or 5 laps, it was basically a test session, and Andy was miles ahead, so I just wanted to keep on a decent pace in case he had an issue and bring it home.
Well done, well done. Let's go to third place then, just down here to Eric. Just mention that incident or that moment there where you were ahead and you were doing all you could to stop him getting past, but once he was alongside, there was nothing you could do.
No, nothing I can do. They were too quick. Those two gentlemen, it was very difficult. And also the track is so quick, and it's very difficult for us because normally we race on tracks where the turns are shorter. So here you have to think that you can go, and it's always difficult.
Fast and flowing, isn't it, around here? And also in the sunshine, these are very different conditions to yesterday.
Yes, we were sad not to practice yesterday, but it was too dangerous anyway, so I think it was the right decision.
Great stuff. It's podium time. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, yeah, Eric Martin used to racing in the shorter European circuits, but made a very good fist of that. Pascal Gerbout, by the way, in 4th place. The rule is that if you don't have a working transponder, you're given a 30-second penalty. So he crossed the line in 4th place, may not hold that, but it won't affect our podium. And Andy Smith, well, he may have across the line off the track, but a 2:06.001 is comfortably the quickest lap anybody has done in a Formula 3 car here. Probably for many years. That's an astonishing performance. And while Dominic Jackson is learning with every mile in the car, Andy Smith is just improving with every mile. Fantastic stuff. Well, some really entertaining stuff. And again, for those of you in the audience who were around to watch Formula 3 in the heydays of the 70s and the 80s, just a little bit of feel-good factor there as well.